I never thought the day would come when my own son would look me in the eyes and call me a burden. But life, I've learned, has a cruel way of showing you the truth, especially when it's wrapped in love you once believed was unconditional. My name is Harold, and I've lived a quiet life. For years, I worked as a postman in our small town, rain, snow, or sun. I walked those same streets, delivering letters filled with dreams, rejections, and sometimes love. My wife, Evelyn, used to say my heart was made of patience and worn leather. She was right, until she passed. After Evelyn died, I poured everything I had into our only son, Lucas. He was my pride, the boy who once clung to my leg when I left for work, who cried when I missed a school play because I had an extra shift. I promised him he'd never have to struggle the way I did. Every dollar I earned after she passed went to his education, his car, his apartment, his future. And now, that same boy had taken everything from me. It started small, a few borrowed bills here and there. He'd come home, his voice soft and trembling. "Dad, I'm just short this month. I'll pay you back." And I believed him, because that's what fathers do, they believe, even when they shouldn't. Over time, the asks became withdrawals. He had access to my account, helping me with online banking, something I never quite understood. One morning, I went to pay the rent for my small apartment, and the number on the screen froze me. 0. My life savings, the money I'd worked 43 years for, gone. When I called Lucas, he didn't answer. Not that day, not the next. Until one evening, a week later, he showed up, not with guilt, not with an apology, but with that smug look that told me everything I didn't want to know. He tossed a duffel bag at my feet. "Dad, I've sold the place. I needed the money. You'll figure it out. You always do." I remember the sound my heart made. It wasn't a crack. It was a silence so deep it swallowed every word I tried to say. "Lucas, this was your mother's house," I whispered. "It was our home." He shrugged. "It was just bricks, Dad. You always said we shouldn't get attached to things." He walked away before I could stop him. The door closed, and I was left staring at the empty walls that once echoed with Evelyn's laughter and Lucas's footsteps. Now, just dust and ghosts. For 3 nights, I slept on the porch. I told myself he'd come back, realize what he'd done. But he didn't. Instead, a letter came from the bank. The house had been transferred. Legally, everything had been signed, and my name had been quietly erased. That was the day I became invisible. I packed what I could, a few shirts, a photograph of Evelyn, my wedding ring, and stepped onto the street. No destination, just away. The nights were colder than I remembered, the ground harder. But it wasn't the cold that hurt. It was knowing that my son, my only family, had chosen money over me. One evening, as I sat outside a cafe, watching the glow of warm light spill through the window, a young woman stepped out. She looked at me, not through me, but at me, and smiled. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, holding out a cup of coffee. It had been weeks since anyone had looked me in the eye. Her name was Grace, a nurse working late shifts at the hospital nearby. She didn't ask for my story, didn't judge the torn jacket or the trembling hands. She just sat beside me and talked about simple things. The weather, her dog, how tired she was from work. And for the first time in months, I laughed. A real laugh. When she left, she pressed a folded note into my palm. Inside, it read, "When the world forgets you, remember kindness remembers first." And below it, her number. That night, I looked up at the stars and whispered to Evelyn, "Someone still sees me." But Lucas. I couldn't stop thinking about him, where he was, what he was doing. Was he proud? Did he sleep soundly knowing I was out here? The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg him for forgiveness. I was going to make him remember what he'd done. Not through anger, but through truth. Because sometimes life's hardest lessons don't come from punishment, they come from consequence. As I took my first step toward finding him, I had no idea that what waited ahead would not only change his life, but mine too. The city was louder than I remembered, cars rushing, people hurrying, faces glued to glowing screens. Everyone chasing something. I was just chasing a memory, For days, I walked until my feet blistered. I asked around at the cafe Lucas once loved, the auto shop where he used to work part-time. No one had seen him in months. It was as if he'd erased himself, just as easily as he'd erased me from his life. But fate, I've learned, has a strange way of revealing what you need when you least expect it. One night, while sitting on a park bench near the river, I overheard two men talking near the food truck. "Did you hear about that new investor? Some young guy named Lucas Harding throwing money around like confetti." My heart stopped. Lucas. He was here. Same city. Living large on money that wasn't his to begin with. My savings, my house, my life. That night, I found a small shelter that let me stay in exchange for helping with morning chores. I scrubbed floors, folded laundry, and handed out soup to others who'd lost everything. Funny thing, when you have nothing, you see the world differently. You start noticing kindness where you never did before. Grace still visited sometimes after her hospital shifts. She'd bring extra food and sit beside me, telling stories that warmed the coldest nights. I never told her the full truth that I wasn't just a homeless man, but a father betrayed. She only knew my name and my quiet gratitude. Then one morning, I saw it on the front page of the local paper. Young entrepreneur Lucas Harding opens new luxury cafe in downtown district. My son, in a tailored suit, smiling for the cameras. And there around his wrist my watch, the one Evelyn gave me on our wedding day. A simple silver timepiece with our initials engraved inside. He wore it like a trophy. That was the moment something in me shifted. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want money back. I wanted him to understand what he'd done to feel what he'd taken, not just from my pocket, but from my heart. Grace noticed the change in me that night. "You've got that look," she said softly, handing me tea. "Like someone who's finally decided what to do." "I have," I told her. "I just don't know how to start." She smiled. "Start with truth. It's harder to hide from than anger." The next day, I went to the cafe. It stood tall, glass walls shining under morning sunlight, customers laughing inside. I stood across the street, invisible again. Then the door opened, and there he was. Lucas, my boy. Polished, confident, surrounded by people who saw only success. For a moment, pride crept in. That was my son, my blood. But then I saw the emptiness in his eyes, the restless way he checked his phone between every sentence. He was winning everything except peace. I waited until the crowd thinned before I walked in. The girl at the counter looked uneasy at my worn coat and rough hands. "Sir, I'm sorry. We don't—" "Tell Mr. Harding his father is here," I said quietly. The words made her freeze. She glanced at the back office, then disappeared through the door. Moments later, Lucas came out. When his eyes met mine, he stopped cold. "Dad," he muttered, disbelief clouding his face. "What are you doing here?" I looked around the cafe, every polished surface glimmering with the money that once built my home. "You've done well for yourself," I said. He shifted, forcing a smile. "I was going to call. Things have been busy." "Busy enough to forget the man who raised you?" The smile faltered. He motioned me toward the back room, embarrassed. "Let's not make a scene, okay?" Inside, the office smelled of fresh coffee and new paint things he'd bought with my sacrifices. "I saw the paper," I said, staring at the framed article of his grand opening. "You look happy." He sat down, rubbing his temples. "Dad, I didn't mean for things to go this way. I needed a start. You always told me to take risks." "Risks," I repeated softly, "not theft." His jaw tightened. "I built this, Dad. Maybe I used your money, but look, it worked. You should be proud." Proud. The word hit me like a stone. I pulled out the folded photo of Evelyn, the one I'd kept through every cold night. "Your mother believed in you. She wanted you to be kind before successful. What would she say if she saw this?" Lucas's eyes flickered to the photo, and for a heartbeat, guilt cracked through his pride, but only for a heartbeat. "She's gone," he muttered, "and you should have moved on too." I stood there, silent. There was nothing left to say. Some lessons, I realized, can't be spoken, they have to be felt. I placed the photo on his desk and turned to leave. You'll understand one day, Lucas, when the things you own stop filling the spaces love used to live. He didn't stop me. Not then. That night, back at the shelter, Grace found me sitting alone. I told her everything, from the savings to the house, to the son who forgot what love was worth. She didn't speak for a while. Then she said something I'll never forget. You gave him everything, Harold. Maybe it's time you give yourself something to forgiveness. Her words stayed with me for days. I didn't know how to forgive him, but maybe, just maybe, I could forgive myself for believing love was enough to protect him from greed. Weeks passed. I continued helping at the shelter, and for the first time in years, I felt useful again. Life was quieter, simpler, honest. Then, one rainy afternoon, a car stopped outside. A familiar voice called my name. Dad. Lucas stood there, soaked, eyes red. In his hands, he held that same silver watch and an envelope. He looked smaller now, stripped of the arrogance that once filled him. You were right, he whispered. The house, the cafe, the money, none of it means anything without you. I took the watch from his trembling hands. The time still ticked steady, patient, like forgiveness waiting to be found. I smiled faintly. It's never too late to figure it out, son.